Now, the fact that it was set in a glamorous era in New York doesn't hurt. And I think that certainly the book, that Rules of Civility, had, I think, characters that entertained people, partly because I found them very entertaining. The characters, I enjoyed the company of the characters in Rules of Civility, and I think that makes it easier for the readers to enjoy their company too. So yeah, I kind of think of the 1930s New York, or this period from the Russian Revolution to the Cold War, as a part of my era, in that it's within that kind of bright lit circumference of what I know, what you know, with very little effort. We kind of, if you were a brand new reader picking up Rules of Civility, you pick it up having some familiarity with New York in the 30s, even though you don't necessarily remember why. So yeah, I like that space that is not immediate, but is within this, within the current stage. But would I be willing to write about contemporary times? I certainly would. We can see a Shakespeare play today, and it can feel very contemporary in its concerns, not because Shakespeare has anticipated, the world of 21st century America, but because he's writing in a style that he's putting the human condition out onto a stage that makes it universal. And that's certainly the goal. And that's a goal I strive for. Whether or not I achieve it is a different thing, but that is, I'm of the type of author who that's really the heart of the ambition. If you asked an average American, what percentage of Russians from 1920 to the end of the Cold War were communists, people would say, I don't know, 90%, 85, 95. But in fact, it was only about 10%, because to be a communist in Russia meant you were a member of the party. And the party stopped taking new members. Because as soon as the revolution was over, the people in charge, who were members of the Communist Party, they used the party to provide privileges. You remember the Communist Party? You had access to apartment buildings with bigger apartments. You had access to stores that had food in them. So the concept of kind of the 1%, as it were, was very much alive and well in Bolshevik Russia, right from the get-go, except that it wasn't people who had built fortunes in business or who had inherited the money, but they immediately recognized the benefits of closing the doors once they were into the club, and so that's what they did. And so, yes, the count is, to some degree, that's unfolding in the Russia around you. Certain people have access to the great resources of the time that the vast majority of the country don't have access to, and we certainly have seen that in the United States increasingly in the last couple of decades. As almost any kind of service that you can imagine, America now has a class system associated with it. You go to Disneyland, you can do it in the premium version or the budget version. If you fly, you feel that way, of course. But there's many services now that are tiered in that way. So yeah, I think that as it turns out, is a pretty universal issue, because it keeps. We keep seeing it rediscovered in society after society, century after century.